And welcome to a very special episode of the Dolphin Pod, live from Staten Island University Hospital Community Park, right alongside the Staten Island Ferry with a nice view of the Manhattan skyline in the background. This weekend, the College of Staten Island baseball team calls this facility home. My name is Joe Foreman, alongside my broadcast partner for the weekend, Nick Durst. And Nick, welcome back to the Dolphin Pod.
Great to be back. Was on a guest in the first season and proud to make my return here in 2023.
A very special weekend here at Staten Island University Hospital Community Park. The Dolphins opened their home schedule. They took on Bloomfield College earlier today. Unfortunately for the Dolphins, they suffered a pair of losses in those games. They are right back at it tomorrow against Caldwell University, hoping to turn things around at the plate.
Yeah, very busy weekend here for Dolphins athletics, and we'll talk more about that a little later on. But first games here, when we record this, it's Saturday night right now. Dolphins offensively could not get it going. Very cold here, very frigid. Good pitching. Usually that has the advantage early on in the season when it's cold, the pitching. So when it gets a little warmer, I'm sure the bats will warm up as well.
Well, I'm glad you made that point, Nick. The Dolphins did get some very good pitching, especially in Game 2 from Ryan Kehoe. A strong effort from him. He was a tough luck loser in that game. The Dolphins didn't get him any run support. They out-hit the Bears 4-2 in the second game, but unfortunately for CSI, they were not able to pick up a win on this afternoon. However, we did have a lot of championship action over the course of the last few weeks. It's been quite some time since our last Dolphin Pod back at the end of January, but we've been very busy here at CSI Athletics preparing for championship season. And Nick, you and I are going to recap some of championship season right now, beginning first with indoor track and field at the East Coast Conference Championship. New record for Jasmine Severo in the high jump. She's been very impressive all season long, took first place at the East Coast Conference Championship. It was a tremendous effort for her. Also, Skylar Pointer took second in the weight throw, placed well on the shot put on top of that. All conference honors for both Severo and Pointer at the East Coast Conference Championship. Severo first team all conference in the high jump. Pointer first team all conference in the weight throw. Second team all conference in the shot put. A lot for the Dolphins to be proud of at the conclusion of the indoor track and field season.
Anytime you can set records, it's a job well done. A lot of records there. We saw some records in other sports as well, which we're going to discuss, but good job to those on the track and field team.
Well, Nick, here's something you can speak a bit more about. You and I were at the Metropolitan Conference Swimming and Diving Championship back a couple of weeks ago, near the end of February. An electric atmosphere once again at the Sonny Werblin Rec Center on the campus of Rutgers University. Let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah, it was pandemonium in Piscataway as the Mets were going on, crazy amount of swimming going on. 4 days, you were there all day long, 9 a.m. till 9 p.m., and it was a lot of swimming, a lot of fun. The crowd was really into it, pumped up, and the Dolphins set a bunch of records.
They sure did. We had a lot of records in this year's Metropolitan Conference Swimming and Diving Championship. We will run through some of those as you and I got to watch those records set firsthand this past weekend. A lot for the Dolphins to be proud of coming out of the Swimming and Diving Championship with the Mets Conference as well. For the men, they set records in the 400 free relay, the 800 free relay, and the 400 medley relay. Now keep in mind, some of these records weren't set at the Mets Championships. These are records the Dolphins set this season. Many of them were set at the recent Mets Swimming and Diving Championship. For the women, they set records in the 100 fly, the 200 free relay, the 400 free relay, and the 800 free relay. Also, Jordan Swanson broke all women's diving records this season. A tremendous season for her as she continues her impressive career.
Yeah, absolutely dominating for Jordan Swanson when it comes to the record books. She is rewriting them. Going to go down as maybe the best diver of all time for the College of Staten Island. So quite an accomplishment for her and plenty more left in her collegiate career.
No doubt about that. And yesterday, we also had the debut of another CSI Dolphins program for the season. We got our first look at baseball today. They, of course, just returned from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Yesterday, CSI Softball opened their season, and it was an offensive onslaught for the Dolphins in their first two games, scoring a combined 16 runs.
Yeah, Dolphins looking really good on the road to get things going. A little quirkiness. They played their road games at home, so they had the home field advantage there. Didn't have to travel for the road game. That's always good. Offensive explosion, Joe. The team looked tremendous. Good dominating pitching as well. Could be a really exciting season for the Dolphins this season on the diamond.
A lot to look forward to for women's softball. I get the chance to be a part of that down in Florida. I'll be traveling down tomorrow night alongside our colleague Andrew Rotundo. The Dolphins play 8 games down in Florida at this year's spring games. We will have all of those games streamed with audio on CSI Sportsnet. You'll have to check that out on our YouTube channel. We're only streaming to the ECC Network games where we can bring you both audio and video. Don't want to bring you anything short of a complete broadcast on the ECC Network. But over on our Sportsnet YouTube page, we will have an audio-only stream of each game down at the spring games coming up this week. Andrew and I very much looking forward to that. A lot of softball on the horizon for this Dolphins team. I know you can't wait to call some of the action at home.
Yeah, it's always exciting to see the Dolphins play softball at home, especially when they're good. And the quick pace of softball games is really fun to watch. Lightning quick pace, great pitching, always fun to call those type of games.
Now let's talk about another conference championship that just took place. Men's and women's basketball on the road Wednesday at UDC. The women were up first. The Dolphins went into the tournament playing their best basketball of the season, and in their first ever appearance in the ECC tournament, they picked up a win over the Firebirds.
And they were led by their best player for 2 years now, Jenelise Alarcon, who was named to the ECC All-Conference second team. She was tremendous. 34 points, double-double. Kaya Johnson also double-double with 10 rebounds. Those two were awesome and led the Dolphins into the semifinals of the East Coast Conference Tournament.
Well, you could not ask for any more from Jenelise Alarcon. Career high, a double-double. You mentioned it, Kaya Johnson, a double-double. The Dolphins had 5 players score in double figures in that game. That is a recipe for success for this women's basketball team. Unfortunately, the men who followed up the women's game could not pick up the win. It was a tremendous, resilient effort from the men in that game. They fell behind big in that game, but they could not complete the comeback as they pulled to within 2 in the closing minutes, and after that fell short, ultimately losing by 10.
Rough loss, tough pill to swallow, but the team accomplished a lot this season by getting into the tournament. A lot of people doubted that they'd be able to do it. They were able to do it. They were led this season by Messiah Mallory, who was named to the All-Conference first team, so he was awesome this season. Chris Velasquez had his best year of his career as a senior. He was really good this year. Waterman shot some great three-pointers all year long. Luis Armas had a career year as well from the field. So a lot to look forward to here for the Dolphins moving forward.
No question about that. And for this men's basketball program and the women's basketball program, plenty to look forward to next season. The Dolphins in their first season of playoff eligibility, qualifying for the East Coast Conference Championship Tournament. The women go as far as to pick up a win. Unfortunately, their bid for a championship came to an end earlier today at Damon University.
We were watching the game while calling this game of baseball here, and at one point we were calling both games. We're just that good. What a dynamic duo on the broadcast. It was exciting, though. Nobody gave them any sort of shot. They went into halftime with the lead. So a lot to be excited about if you are on that team, and a lot to be excited about if you are a fan of the team moving forward here. Because who saw this coming? In their first year allowed to be in a playoff, they go to the semifinals. Job well done to Coach Sarcone, the rest of the coaching staff, and all the players this season.
Well, moving forward for the women's basketball team, they return a lot of their roster. They are graduating just one senior this year. That is arguably their best shooter, and Gia Esposito can score in bunches. The Dolphins will certainly miss her, but much of that roster will remain intact next season.
Everybody that's a big name other than Gia is coming back, and the freshmen who made an impact are coming back as well. Phelan's going to be back. Amaya Jenkins, who was tenacious all season long, she's going to be back. So a lot of people returning for them. Even with the men, a lot of players are returning. We want to give a shout-out to Brian Gomez, Justin Cardenas, and Chris Velasquez, the seniors. We had a great senior day ceremony a few weeks back, or a week back if you're watching this in real time in the tank. And kudos to them. But both teams are going to be returning a lot of key players. So we'll see what happens in the recruiting portal here, who commits. But a lot to be excited about. I'm really looking forward to basketball season next year.
I know I'm very much looking forward to see the products of the recruiting effort for both men's and women's basketball. Playoff berth in their first year of eligibility. We'll see what lies ahead next year as the Dolphins came very close on the women's side to a berth in the conference championship. You said it. They led at halftime, and they pushed the Wildcats to the limit earlier today. Unfortunately, they came up just short. Looking ahead to another season that's soon getting underway, outdoor track and field. A very big development coming up this week at the College of Staten Island. For those who don't know, they are having the official ribbon cutting at our new track. Now, Nick, that track not only relevant to our track and field program, that could very well be the site of soccer next season.
Multi-purpose field.
We might be back outdoors calling soccer there next year. I can't pretend I'm thrilled about it, but that certainly is a possibility in the future.
Would not be ideal, as it would be very cold or too hot, and it's very tough for us to call a soccer game from the field level, but that field's going to be awesome. Can't wait to see what it looks like. It's also going to be the home to the faculty, staff, or students flag football game. Hopefully we get to participate in that. It's going to be taking place on that field as well.
We will see if that game comes to fruition. I very much look forward to all of our faculty staff games. Sal Caruso does a great job organizing those. But for the track and field program, that new field and the new track, huge for them. I know they're also working on a throwing room. I'm not sure if that's been completed yet, but there are a lot of projects going on in support of that program. They certainly deserve it. Very resilient bunch. Performed very well at the conference championship this year, and we look forward to seeing what they can do moving forward. Now, before we sign off, we have to talk a bit more about baseball and softball. Their season's just getting underway. They're also postseason eligible this year. You got your first look at this men's baseball team today. What do they have to do moving forward in order to earn that berth in the playoffs?
Number one, they got to keep up the good pitching. If you can limit your opponent to 1 run a game, like we saw in the second game of the doubleheader Saturday, or 2 runs or 3 runs, even 4 runs at this level, you should be good. But that has to coincide with good hitting. So you have to score more runs in order to win. So you don't want to leave those pitchers hanging too much longer. They're throwing gems, get them the run support they deserve, and pick up some victories.
Now, on the women's side, the Dolphins lose the University of Bridgeport in the East Coast Conference. Bridgeport moves on from the ECC. That leaves a hole atop the conference. Bridgeport was the 1 seed last year. That conference is wide open for the taking. Stacked, generally considered among the favorites. The Dolphins will certainly be chasing them this year, but CSI has as good a chance as anyone, especially given their performance yesterday taking on Alliance University. I mentioned it before, 16 runs scored. But as for the Dolphins in that game, they did a great job pitching as well. It wasn't just the offense. The pitching shouldn't be overlooked. If the Dolphins can continue with complete efforts like that against the conference, they should be in a great position moving forward this season and could perhaps clinch their first berth in the East Coast Conference Championship Tournament. But we thank everyone who joined Nick and I for this special episode of the Dolphin Pod. You take a look over our shoulder. You can see the New York skyline. The scoreboard has been turned off. We did have our CSI Dolphins graphic up there earlier. Antonino Cruciata, our engineer for this episode, we are sure we'll get you some great looks at that. Be sure to tune in next time for another episode of the Dolphin Pod. I did promise Alberto Sanchez as our guest for this episode. However, Alberto was out sick earlier in the week on Friday. We just missed him. Wanted to talk to someone with some East Coast Conference Championship experience. That conversation will have to wait. We can now talk to both Coach Tibbs and Coach Sarcone about that. We look forward to those conversations in the future. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. This has been Episode 5 of the Dolphin Pod, exclusively on CSI Sportsnet.